All right, I got my guy, Dr. Tracy Gapin, on the show. He's a renowned expert in men's health optimization, longevity. He's got over 25 years in the business as an experienced board certified urologist. Dr. Tracy Gapin, welcome to the show, brother.
What's up, Joel? Good morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Excited to get into things with you, man. I know you're doing a lot around the worlds of men's health and health optimization, CEOs, athletes. But I'm always curious, like, how did you jump into this journey? Like, obviously you have this background as a urologist for 25 years, but what
Yeah,
was the shift or the paradigm shift for you where you said, we got to do something different here. My mission's
yeah,
I'm shifting, I'm changing. When did that start to happen?
yeah. Like so many docs, it's a personal story that really drove me, and that was around 10, 12 years ago now. I was very busy in my urology practice, doing robotic surgery, treating prostate cancer, saving lives every day, while I was totally neglecting my own health. And I wake up one day and I realize I'm 30 pounds overweight. I feel like crap. I look like crap. I am stressed out. I'm not eating well. I'm not sleeping well. And, here I am supposed to be the men's health expert. And I was a mess. And I went for my first physical ever. Doctors are the worst patients. And so I went for my first physical ever, got some lab work done. And it was a really eye opening, pivotal moment in my life when this primary care doctor here in Sarasota, Florida, tells me that really I probably just need to be on a statin, that you need to lose some weight, exercise, diet, all that kind of, basic stuff that doctors tell you, but you just probably need to be on a statin. And I
Wow.
knew that my problem was not statin deficiency. I knew there was more to it, more to how do I turn things around for myself than that. And so that got me into the world of epigenetics, which is the science of how lifestyle affects your genetic expression and how your body works. And I started learning about functional medicine and longevity and peptides and how to do hormones the right way. I went through all these different certifications and courses and really learning an entirely different approach to medicine than I was ever taught. And it made me realize how my entire medical education, going back to medical school back in the 90s, was all based around find the diagnosis and here's the drug to treat it. Diagnosis, drug, diagnosis, drug. And it was a really eye-opening moment for me when I had to really change the way I approached my own personal health and my own life. And that really shifted how I approached my patients as well. And so, with this newfound perspective on a very different way to approach health and men's health in particular, I turned my own health around and my patients started seeing great results as well. And it's one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I couldn't go back again. And so I made a really crucial decision, a life changing decision for my career and my life, that I left traditional medicine. And I did what no doctor it really does, and call it courage, call it lack of any other option. Like I had no choice. I had to leave. And so I jumped off this figurative cliff and I left my urology practice. I said goodbye. And I left a 7-figure practice to start from zero, from ground zero, with Gapin Institute, which is my longevity center now. And that was 5 years ago. And we've exploded and grown from then. And it's really become a passion project now. And before, Joel, I was doing a job, like doing
Mm.
urology, doing robotic surgery. Yeah, it's cool stuff, I guess, but I didn't really feel like I was having the impact that I wanted to have. Now I just freaking love what I do, and I'm having a much bigger impact in a very different way. And it's truly aligned to me and my goals and my life as well.
Love that, dude. I love that. I was gonna ask you because I work with a lot of men too, and I see I'm 42 years old, and I see 30s, 40s. We start to see like what you just said. We're working really hard. We're trying to make an income. We're trying to provide for our families and do the best we can. But yeah, at the same time, we're 30 pounds overweight. We've got all this inflammation. And I hear it all the time. It's like, man, Joel, I go to work and when I get home, I don't have any energy. I just want to go to
Yeah.
sleep. And it's so sad because then also these men that we need in our life to be powerful, to show up, to be leaders in the home, they can't for their kids. They don't even have the energy.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you, obviously, and I'm sure when you see this all the time, and guess what? Low T. And I know a lot of my friends that have, first responders, police officers, firemen, that they get on testosterone replacement, they feel like a new man and they're like amazing. Right. But I wanted to ask you, is it it's probably very common that you see, but are we only dealing with this overweight and like lack of going to the gym and 30 pounds overweight? Is that what's driving a lot of this T? Or do you see, I feel like we're in this epidemic of low T, and it's not just that.
We are.
What do you see?
We are, yeah, and I see it as this confluence of a lot of different factors coming together. So I first of all, I look at it from the big picture as a triad. There's low testosterone, there's systemic inflammation, and there's cardiovascular disease, and the three are very intimately tied together. And so a lot of guys are trying to just do TRT, for example, like you mentioned, and that's not the answer. TRT is great; it's a big part of it. But you have to fix the systemic inflammation. You have to fix the vascular disease, the insulin resistance, blood sugar regulation. And that's all tied to things like stress, like what you talked about, like a lot of the high performers, whether you're a CEO, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you're an executive, you deal with a lot of freaking stress. And a lot of guys don't want to accept that or admit it, but stress is affecting you. And what stress does is it crushes your gut, first of all. So it affects the lining of your gut, affects your microbiome, which actually sends a signal to your entire body. It affects metabolism. It affects energy system. It affects hormone production, neurotransmitters in your brain, immune system. Almost everything is in some way or another tied to the gut. And you get this systemic inflammatory response, which raises blood sugar. So now you're not able to control your blood sugar. You're not sleeping well because stress alters your brain and alters sleep. You're tired all the time. You don't get as much work done during the day. So now what do? You're staying up late trying to get more work done because you weren't as productive as you could have, should have, would have been during the day. And it becomes this ugly, vicious cycle of hormones, inflammation, blood sugar problems, nutrient deficiencies, poor sleep, high stress. And it becomes an ugly, vicious cycle. And it is an epidemic. And the solution's not just testosterone. There's so much more than that for that reason.
Yeah. Okay. Love that. I love that you said that, and I love that it's not just. I'm always happy that guys are getting results with testosterone TRT replacement. That's great, but I'm always saying, like, guys, there's other things going on. Like, we've got to look at the body holistically. Like in what you just said, I love those top three things. How you broke that down: inflammation, cardiovascular, and then low testosterone. It's all a result of these things. I wanted to ask you, because I know there's something that you say is hormones, and you mentioned it just earlier, and epigenetics. Why do you feel like these are the game-changing keys to unlocking, men's full potential?
Yeah. So it's comical to me that there are these influencers, I'll call them, out there, these practitioners, not doctors, who are trying to sell people like a stack of 8 peptides. And we'll talk about peptides, I'm sure, at some point. Love peptides, love testosterone replacement therapy. Those are very valuable. But a lot of the foundational key elements get overlooked, and they're so important. So I look at it as like you're baking a cake, and the ingredients are proper nutrition, gut health, hormones, sleep, fitness and movement, mindset and stress, toxins. Those are the big ingredients of this cake. Then once you've addressed all these foundational fundamental elements, that's, epigenetics is how do we get our body to work like it's supposed to? So, for example, based on your genes, you may be at risk for something like Alzheimer's disease or cognitive decline or early cardiovascular disease, for example. But your diet, your nutrition can often completely change the way those genes are expressed, the way they work. And so that's what the science of epigenetics is all about, is modifying lifestyle factors to influence your genes to get the results you want. And so many times it's when you're dialing in your sleep and your nutrition and your fitness and your mindset and stress, that's half the battle right there. And that's what often gets missed for the sexy, you have this cake, the sexy icing on top. The frosting is like the peptides and the plasmapheresis and the cryo and the sauna and the red light and the PEMF. Those are badass, awesome treatments in the proper context and once you've gotten the foundation in place.
Yeah. Well, talk about just some of those, because I know you like to do a lot of these advanced diagnostics. And what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like if someone were to come work with you, we can do the testosterone. We can do this. We can check your hormones. Like, that's part of it. But what are some of the other diagnostics? It sounds like you're very keen on some of these genetic tests or DNA testing to also see, let's see, look at the big picture and let's see what we need to optimize. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So when I talk about, finding your blind spots to know what to address, it's hormones first. It's free testosterone. It's thyroid. It's DHEA. It's vitamin D, it's nitric oxide, it's growth hormone, it's all these cortisol, all these key hormones we care about. It's cardiovascular markers, things like ApoB, apolipoprotein B. Every guy should be checking ApoB. It's the most important marker for cardiovascular risk that we have out there. Most doctors don't even know about it. Most guys aren't checking it. Very important. LP little a, another key cardiovascular marker. It's genetically inherited. Every guy should be getting these markers checked. Blood sugar markers, fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, really important to look at blood sugar management, not just for diabetics, for everyone. Markers of inflammation, CRP, ferritin is a really important one. LPPLA2 is a vascular inflammatory marker. And then micronutrient levels, homocysteine is really important, folate, B12. That's the blood work. The genetics, we want to look at markers of things like, how does your body deal with saturated fat? So you have these people, influencers on Twitter and Reddit and Instagram. They're battling over the perfect diet and whether carnivore is good or bad, whether keto or paleo is good or bad, whether vegan is good or bad. It depends on your unique physiology and based on your background, your ancestors and your genetics, your body's going to respond differently than others. The Alaskan Eskimos, thousands of years ago, they're eating whale blubber. Asians are eating fish and rice. Africans are eating wild game. They've all adapted over generations to respond best to the diet that's inherent to where they come from. And so your own body's going to respond differently as well. And so genetics will help you understand that maybe keto or carnivore is not right for you based on your genetics. Maybe that might put you at increased risk of chronic disease. Maybe carbs, which are frowned upon, may actually be good for you for your metabolism and energy and weight loss and building muscle. Sometimes your genetics will help you understand that certain micronutrients you might be at risk for deficiency or you need a certain type of it. Vitamin A, a great one, for example, based on your BCMO gene, that you may not absorb beta carotene at all, and you need the retinoic acid form, the active form of vitamin A, for example. Vitamin D, you may need higher levels because your body doesn't convert it properly from the inactive to the active form. So all these different amazing genetic SNPs or variants help us understand how to really just get our body to work like it's supposed to. The other big part I'll talk about here is functional testing. So gut health testing. I love gut health testing because almost every guy to a T, and men and women as well, but my passion has always been men's health. Almost every guy to a T has issues with their microbiome, with their gut health, their gut integrity, and they don't realize it. It may be brain fog, it may be low energy, it may be poor recovery, it may be difficulty with losing weight, burning fat, building muscle. All of that is tied to your gut. And a lot of times when you fix the microbiome issues, it helps you achieve these other goals as well. So this is what I mean by finding your blind spots. That you got to do the advanced diagnostic testing because you'll find stuff that you had no idea was there.
Yeah, so critical, man. I was just thinking as you were talking, it's so easy, sleep, obviously, we know is such a big thing, but I think 400 times like the amount of melatonin is made in the gut. So it's like,
yeah,
if we're trying to optimize sleep, but we're not focusing on the gut, I mean, we could totally be missing something. So test, not guess. And I know you like to do these tests. And I think the way you do this is people will come in and they'll just do this all like knock out all these things in a day. Cause a lot of people you work with, time is very precious and they don't have time. Is that correct? Like if someone were to come work with you, just kind of do like, boom, do all these tests in one day. And then now we have a game plan for you guys.
Yeah. Time is money. For most people, our most valuable commodity is time. And so what I really love to do is compress time and get all the testing done in one day. And so, a lot of guys have heard of the executive exam. I have a modern executive exam where we integrate all these tests into one freaking day to get everything done so that you can continue your busy life, but start to integrate the things you need to do. And you need it quick, you need it now, you need results and data. And I love to rely on data so that everything we do is data driven and whatever Joel needs is different than what I need and different than what the next guy needs. And so that's where the testing can help us really dial that in very quickly. And my catchphrase is one size fails all, that we don't have time to mess around and figure out, what's right for me, what's wrong for me. The testing helps guide that so that you can get results honestly faster than you need it.
Yeah. So amazing. Talk about testosterone because it is, I know it's like all the rage right now, TRT, but it's also to me very confusing. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the markers are just so wide, right? It's like the range is normal is like 400 to 1200. So, and how do you distill that down when you're meeting with some of the guys that are probably coming in again with things that we typically say, man, I'm just low libido, I just overweight. I don't have the motivation, Tracy, to want to go and do some of these things. And you check their T and, maybe it's like 400, but how do we know like what a normal range is? Like how do we determine these things? So confusing.
So much to unpack. I love this. Okay. So first of all, let me set the foundation here. There are 3 longitudinal studies, massive studies from the US, one in the US, 2 in Europe. So 3 longitudinal studies that followed men for 20 to 30 years, okay, decades. And they found that testosterone levels, specifically free testosterone, which is the bioavailable active form that we really care about, is 40 to 45% lower than it was 20 years ago. Okay,
wow.
Almost half. It's declined that much over the last 20 years. And I think toxins are the biggest culprit, but we can talk about that next. But nonetheless, suffice it to say, studies clearly show levels are half what they were. That means that a 42-year-old guy today has a testosterone level that's about half, give or take, of what it was 20 years ago. It's crazy. And so now understanding that, when you get a lab slip, you get LabCorp, Quest, or in the lab, and you've had your testosterone level drawn, that result, that range on the right side of the page that people look at, and we were trained as doctors to simply look at that ridiculous range, and if you're in the range, you're good. If you're out of the range, you're bad. That very simplistic perspective. But that range, is important to understand where that comes from. That range is not the optimal ideal range. It doesn't say that. It says reference range. Any lab slip says reference range. And what is that? A reference range is the average. So what that means is LabCorp does 1 billion labs every year. And what's the average of all of the testosterone levels that were done for that year, for example? And it's a bell curve, right? You have the median, and you look standard, 2 standard deviations above and below that, and it's like a bell curve. You have your reference range. It's the freaking average of all the lab tests they do. Knowing that levels are half what they were 20 years ago, you can imagine what that reference range has done over the last 20 years. It gets lower and lower and lower by about 1% every single year. And because they're going to this, standard deviation 2 above and below the median, that's why you have such a wide, ridiculous range of, like you said, like it'll say like 236 up to 920. It's insane. Number one, you shouldn't be looking at total, because the bioavailable or free is all that matters. That's the only testosterone that can actually have any effect on your body. But number 2, that range is useless because it's just the average of the population. And we don't want to be average, which we know is half where you want to be. And so my target, first of all, again, free testosterone is what I focus on. And that range right now will say 4 to 22. No lie. It's ridiculously 4 to 22 is the range. And my target for most guys is around 20, 22, 24 is the target. Which is, if you look at the range, it may even say above the range. I don't care what that range is. That's the average. That's not where I want to be. And so that's what you really have to do when you think about testosterone, is not look at the reference range, because it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. That's so wild. And, and I've heard, for example, cholesterol. I just want to this is kind of a side point, but cholesterol, for example, we know the ranges have changed. And I remember hearing some stat that like cholesterol back, 50 years ago, normal was considered like even 300. And now doctors want to see you, under like 180. Just out of curiosity, and I know we're not going to go down in the heart, but you mentioned heart health earlier. Do you see the same thing? Are you too worried about cholesterol necessarily? We know cholesterol is great for the brain as we age and all these other things, but cardiovascular health is really, really important, like you mentioned. But is that something similar we see?
Yeah, great question. So absolutely right. Cholesterol is important. Our body needs cholesterol. It's not the evil, arch enemy that everyone thinks it is. What's important is not to be looking at total cholesterol. Total cholesterol doesn't really matter. And in fact, LDL cholesterol doesn't really matter either, which is very controversial, I know, but it's true, because we know that, cholesterol is carried in our body in these submarines, I call them. Okay. This is my analogy to help the lay person understand this. Cholesterol is a lipid, right? And it doesn't mix. Fat and water doesn't mix. So it has to be transported through our bodies in these little submarines called lipoproteins. Okay. And LDL is one kind of lipoprotein. LDL-C is measuring how much cholesterol is inside those submarines. what studies have shown us, the Framingham study is the best study that people can reference for this, showed us that the number of submarines, the particle number, particle count, LDL-P is, or ApoB, is much more important than LDL cholesterol, because that's actually measuring, the LDL-P is measuring the number of LDL particles or submarines in your bloodstream. The more submarines, the more, and the more small submarines, the more likely those are going to be able to get into the blood vessel wall and ultimately deposit the cholesterol, which then can promote an inflammatory response, which downstream decades later leads to what's called atherosclerosis, plaque, etc. And so cholesterol is not the enemy. LDL particle number definitely contributes to cardiovascular disease, and that's where there's controversy there as well. But it's not just that. Some people have high lipids and they have no vascular disease. How is that? And the answer is it's a combination. It's lipids, it's blood sugar regulation, it's inflammation, and that's where we come back full circle to testosterone, because testosterone directly affects all of that. And in fact, studies show, multiple studies have shown, dozens of studies have shown that low testosterone directly correlates with poor blood sugar regulation, which is insulin resistance, increased systemic inflammation, increased LDL particle number, and oh, by the way, increased risk of cardiovascular death and overall mortality. Low testosterone directly correlates with overall and cardiovascular mortality. And that's why, because it impacts inflammation, blood sugar regulation, and lipids, which are all the ingredients you need, not just lipids alone. So that's why cholesterol is just one tiny piece of the whole story, and total cholesterol is a fairly worthless number.
Yeah, is it? And I think there's some recent studies came out showing that like people, I didn't read the actual study, but it was people with higher LDL live longer. So I mean, just having these one markers, like one-offs, doesn't, you got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah,
like you said.
there's a lot of, you're right. There's a lot of conflicting studies on that, and there are other studies, to be fair, that show that elevated LDL have a markedly increased risk of death and mortality, the exact opposite.
Yeah,
I think the reality of what we're really learning, putting all these different studies and pieces together, is that it's multifactorial, right? It's always more complex than you think it is. And it's typically, again, we know blood sugar regulation, poor insulin resistance directly ties to vascular disease.
Yeah.
And it's the common. So if you think about the pathophysiology, how does vascular disease happen? Well, the submarine, the lipid has to get deposited into the blood vessel wall, but that alone does not cause problems, because HDL, the other submarine, the friendly submarine, will pull that cholesterol back out and bring it back to the liver, and it's gone. No, what has to happen is a monocyte, a white cell, has to identify that cholesterol that's below the blood vessel wall surface as a foreign invader. It attacks it. It creates an inflammatory immune response. It creates a foam cell, which then eventually over many years gets oxidized and eventually calcified to form plaque. That's a decades-long process, but it was not just the cholesterol. It was the inflammation. It was the altered immune function and the blood sugar dysregulation and the hormone imbalance that all contribute to that process.
Yeah, massive. Testosterone, too, to your point, is really, really good for the heart, from what I understand. And the largest amount of testosterone, I thought I had read, is in the heart. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're exactly right that the studies show without question that men with low testosterone have a massively increased risk of cardiovascular disease, major adverse cardiac events, which means stroke, heart attack, sudden death, and also overall mortality. Very powerful data on that. There were two crummy studies that suggested the opposite, that got all the attention, got the black box warning, got people up in arms, got every doctor afraid to prescribe testosterone. But if you look at those studies, they're greatly flawed. One of them actually had women in the study. One of them didn't even look at actual patient data. They just looked at testosterone prescriptions and did they die? They didn't look at numbers. They didn't look at any clinical information at all. They didn't look at patient charts. It was purely insurance data. Did they get a testosterone prescription and did they die? And so when you look at the real studies, the actual prospective randomized trials, there are many gold standard studies on this. They all show the same exact thing. And that is that there's a massively decreased risk of cardiovascular disease when you optimize testosterone.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, because I hear this all the time. Well, first of all, and I see anecdotally with a lot of friends and guys, they're just telling me about how their libido improved immensely after testosterone. But then I hear from doctors like yourself, actually, technically, it doesn't. It doesn't actually do anything for libido. But what you're saying, if it improves cardiovascular health, well, part of having good erections is cardiovascular health. So I'm wondering if that's why. Or I wanted to ask you, so does tea improve libido?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, without quite. Yeah, and so when people think about testosterone, they think about sexual performance and they think about building muscle. But in my mind, testosterone is critically important for cognitive function, for mental focus, mental acuity, memory, concentration, mood, energy, the ability to build muscle, the ability to burn fat, the ability to maintain healthy bones. It's, again, as we talked about, important for cardiovascular health. We know that men with low testosterone, this is cutting edge research here, has shown us that men with low testosterone have increased risk of clinically significant prostate cancer. Exact opposite of what I was taught all through my decades in urology, that low T increases your risk of prostate cancer. And so, yes, it helps libido, it helps sexual performance. Yes, it helps build muscle, but it helps everything. It helps reduce inflammation, helps improve blood sugar regulation, improves lipid parameters, and all that contributes to reduced cardiovascular risk.
Yeah. Dr. Gapin, I have a question because, I'm 42 and I struggle with this myself. I'm doing fine in my life right now. But there's going to come a time. I always joke around with people like we were made to procreate and then die. like you have
Right.
kids and then like you just see like all your hormones and everything just starts to dip, right? When you turn 40, just naturally like we start to age, right? Is there any downsides as we age? And I don't know if there's studies showing this, like men in their 70s with, I don't want to say high testosterone, but just if they're doing TRT replacement. And
Yeah.
so normally, I don't know what a normal male in his 70s would be. Let's just say he's 400. But here I am wanting to live a more virile, optimal life, have muscle, have all of these things, have good sex. And I'm in the 700s, which is not like terribly high, but a normal, right? Is that a bad thing, do you think? Or what are your thoughts?
I don't ascribe to the concept of age adjusted levels. And what I mean by that is, why should a 70-year-old guy not be able to live an optimized life and have performance at work, performance in the community, performance with his family, in sports, in every area of his life? Why should he not be optimized and have the same functional levels? And so, to me, when I look at fixing hormone levels, and again, it's not just testosterone, it's thyroid, nitric oxide, vitamin D, growth hormone, et cetera, DHEA, I can go on and on. But for testosterone specifically, my target for most men is going to be around 20 for a free. And that's, by the way, I want to just emphasize, that's a free testosterone. That's nanograms. That's picograms per milliliter, which is different than nanograms per deciliter for total. So, and also some labs, it'll be a different scale. So Quest, for example, that 20 becomes 200. So different scale, same unit for whatever reason. But on LabCorp, it'd be 20. And I would, whether you're 42 or 72, that's my target for you, because we know that that's at a physiologic level where your body needs to be. And so I think about it as momentum. So you were talking earlier, we started talking about how stressed guys are, and you're going through your day and you're grinding, and then you get home and you're exhausted. You go to sleep, you wake up the next day, you do it all over again, and it's almost like Groundhog Day. And what I feel guys need sometimes is a kick in the ass and some momentum to get going in the right direction. And that's what I think testosterone does. Testosterone is not the end all be all. It's not going to solve every problem. But what it will do a lot of times to get guys some momentum is it improves your energy right away. It improves your mood, it improves your cognitive function and your drive. And now suddenly you're like, okay, I could do this. Let's go. Push you. You're going to work out a little harder in the gym. You're going to work out a little longer in the gym. You're going to be more focused and more productive during the day. You're going to get better sleep. You're going to build more muscle, which is going to help you burn some fat, and it's going to increase your metabolism. And now you've got that engine going. You got some momentum going. And now what else can I do? And it starts to get guys heading in the right direction. That's where I love testosterone, is to kind of get things moving. And it's all about, in my mind, momentum.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just look at it as, my goal is to live to 120. That's what they say the telomeres like last. So my goal is to go as far and long as I can. And I don't want to be 70 living a, sexless life and stuff. I want to be as vibrant and energetic as I am now in my 40s, I want the same in my 70s until I'm 100. So that's why I was asking. It's like, yeah, I want that same level, and if it means, you know, doing TRT or doing and having my hormones checked and balanced, then I would rather do that. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are there are very little downsides to TRT, and it gets a bad rap. A lot of guys are afraid of it. It's going to cause prostate cancer. It's going to cause heart attacks. It's going to cause, man boobs. It could make me lose my hair, and all the common concerns that I hear. And there's a lot of misinformation and confusion around it. So to be clear, TRT does not cause cardiovascular disease or heart attacks. And in fact, again, when you optimize testosterone, it dramatically lowers your risk of heart disease and heart attacks and strokes and sudden death. It lowers probably your risk of prostate cancer. Again, we know that guys with low T have an increased risk, so it probably lowers that, but it definitely does not cause prostate cancer. Without question, T does not cause prostate cancer. Man boobs. Man boobs is actually from estrogen. Okay, testosterone gets metabolized or broken down into estrogen. And a lot of guys, especially who are obese, they'll have very high estrogen levels and mediocre testosterone levels. The ratio is off. Too much estrogen, not enough T. Those are the guys that'll get man boobs, and that's because that estrogen is promoting breast tissue to enlarge and grow. When we give testosterone, what happens is now you fix the ratio. You have testosterone where it needs to be, and estrogen may come up with it because, again, it's the metabolite. It's the breakdown product of testosterone. That's okay.
Mm.
And if guys get any side effects from the estrogen, we can modify. There are ways that we can adjust the dosing to get the estrogen levels where we need it to be. But in general, that's a very, very uncommon finding, very low risk of that sort of stuff happening. So TRT is incredibly safe, very little downside, does not cause prostate cancer, does not cause cardiovascular disease, does not cause man boobs. It really causes nothing but positive outcomes in my perspective.
Is it on that note, and I would imagine, because the body works in synergies and in systems, and everybody's talking to each other, and there's multiple hormones, not just testosterone, and so is it a problem to only improve T and not other hormones? Have you ever seen that? Yeah, like that kind of thing happen?
Seen all the time. Yeah. I have a lot of guys who come to me and they've been to the T clinic around the corner, where you pay $50, every time to get a T shot, whatever. And yeah, what happens is you start to feel better initially. You get some initial, boost in your energy and your drive. And it does give you some benefits, but it's just one piece of this much bigger picture. And that's where I like to, again, emphasize that it's this fundamental foundational layer that you need to focus on of not just testosterone, but all the other 50 hormones that we have that we need to be looking at. Again, it comes back to gut health. It comes back to, modifying inflammation, blood sugar regulation, stress, and toxins, and all of these other factors for you to really get the results you're looking for. So I love testosterone, but it has limitations, and it's really just to give you kind of a kickstart, some momentum to be ready to take it to the next level.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about prostate health, because you know a thing or two about that. 25 years in the game and more. But what are the big things? Obviously, I hear a lot of men in their 50s with either prostate issues or prostate cancer seems to be very prevalent in men. What are the top ways that we could start mitigating some of those things and actually have like a healthy prostate? You have so much experience and depth in this. Like, what are the big ones we need to be prepared for?
Sure. Yeah. So prostate growth is actually stimulated long-term by estrogen. Okay. So prostate enlargement and even probably prostate cancer is in some sense estrogen dependent, which comes from testosterone, obviously. So that's why there's the correlation there. But what we know is that toxins in our environment, okay, called endocrine disruptors, are chemicals, toxins in our environment that alter hormone function. And what they do is they have an estrogenic effect. So think of it like a light switch. Testosterone binds to this light switch to turn it on. Okay. The light switch is an androgen receptor. Okay. It's how testosterone signals the body to have an effect. Well, what these estrogenic compounds do is they bind to that light switch and they stick to it like glue and they don't come off, and they overstimulate it. And so that's where you get a lot of the issues like prostate inflammation, prostate enlargement, that is purely estrogen driven from all the toxins in our environment. So this is why I've talked so much about how avoiding chemicals, toxins in our food, in our drinking water, and our personal care products is so important, because one of the big issues with prostate health is by avoiding those toxins, you're going to avoid a lot of the issues that you have with your prostate. And so, testosterone does stimulate prostate growth, but very slowly and over decades and decades. It's not like you're going to take testosterone and then a month later have a massively enlarged prostate and have problems from it. It's more the chronic, daily, systemic exposure to chemicals and toxins that are causing this. So things you could do: filter your water. Our drinking water, without question, studies show, is tainted with chemicals. Synthetic birth control, women's estrogen, synthetic estrogen does not get adequately filtered by our municipal water treatment plants, and we're drinking it. And it's that glue on that light switch we're talking about. And so filter your freaking water. Get a reverse osmosis filter. You can put it under the sink. You can put it on the counter. We have our whole house filtered. We have a Kinetico system. There are a lot of companies out there. That's just the one brand that we happen to use. But filter your water. It's so important. The filter on your fridge doesn't do anything. That's not what we're talking. That's not going to filter these kind of toxins. And so filter your water, and then avoid plastic water bottles, for example. Okay, plastic water bottles, plastic sports bottle, like Powerade, Gatorade. These bottles, they're leaching chemicals, microplastics, BPA, and phthalates into your drinking water on a daily basis. And these chemicals are crushing us. Again, they have an estrogenic effect that's causing infertility, autoimmune disease, prostate issues, hormone-driven cancers, ADHD, precocious puberty, you name it. And these chemicals are all at the root of it. So it's plastics, it's our drinking water, it's your food. Make sure that you're eating organic at all costs. It's worth the extra money. Organic matters. Our crops are sprayed with glyphosate and atrazine and other awful chemicals that have been shown to crush hormone function and production and cause all these downstream issues I just mentioned. And then finally, personal care products. So your deodorant, your soap, your shampoo, your sunscreen, your laundry detergent, massive. The clothes you're wearing, you're absorbing that all day, every day. And so use things like apps on your phone, like the Healthy Living app from the Environmental Working Group. Healthy Living is free. Yucca is free. Think Dirty is free. These are 3 great apps where you can scan barcodes of products, and you'll see all the crap that's in there, and you can find healthy alternatives that don't have all of these endocrine disrupting chemicals that are crushing our health, and back full circle, crushing your prostate.
So it's so crazy, but yeah, just all the things we're exposed to. These environmental toxins are massive, and I didn't realize it was all these. I didn't realize it was the toxins that are stimulating the estrogen. I would imagine, though, based on what you just told us too, though, is that if you are, let's say you didn't even deal with the toxins, which you should, but you're just taking TRT, I would imagine, because there's that balance where estrogen and testosterone are kind of balancing each other. By being on testosterone, you'd actually probably, I would assume, like actually help your levels, because now estrogen is not so high, right? Testosterone,
right. And we also look at estrogen metabolism breakdown, more complex stuff than it's worth getting into today. But there's a big difference between our body's natural estrogen, which is called estradiol, which is our natural body E2 or estradiol, which gets converted into estriol and estrone, which are the estrogen metabolites of how our body clears it. Those are natural, and we do need to look at the breakdown metabolism of that. But these synthetic chemicals are taken to another degree. Again, they're like the glue on the light switch. It's not just like a turn the light switch on and leave. It's bind to it, stick to it, permanent stimulation, overstimulation that's leading to the estrogenic negative consequences.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about tech and wearable tech, because I know in some of your programs, and like the peak performance program, when you're working with men, it's not, we do the diagnostics. You're looking again at everything in a very holistic sense, and some of you use these metrics to help guys track what they're doing. What you can't track, you can't measure, right? And so, what are some of the wearable tech stuff that you like to use in conjunction with your programs?
So we'll talk about sleep, blood sugar, and stress. I think those are the 3 great things that we'll touch on. So first is sleep, and I'm wearing my Aura ring here, and I have no financial affiliation, but I love Aura because they actually have studies that validate the data to actual true sleep study data. And what we care about with sleep is not how long you slept. Yeah, you should be sleeping 7.5 hours minimum every night. That's a given. But what we care more about is the quality of sleep. So think about how many times have you gone to bed at 11, let's just say you wake up at 6 and you think, oh, I slept 7 hours, and you feel like crap. So it's not just the quantity of sleep, it's also the quality. And by that, we look at the different stages of sleep. And did you get enough of the stages that matter? So specifically, deep sleep and REM sleep are the two real most important stages of sleep. And you want 1 hour of deep sleep and you want 2 hours of REM sleep each night. And you tend to get most of your deep sleep in the first half of the night, REM sleep in the second half of the night. And they both serve very different purposes in terms of repair and recovery. When you use a tracker, you can actually see that and understand it and understand how what you're doing is affecting it. For example, alcohol. People drink alcohol and it'll sedate you, but it crushes your quality. And when you see it, that's why you wake up and you feel awful the next morning, because yeah, you slept, but no, it wasn't any good quality restorative sleep. So can't emphasize enough, tracking sleep is critically important. The next one is stress. So stress can be measured directly. Guys deny stress affecting them. Well, we can actually measure it with a metric called heart rate variability, or HRV. And there are a lot of ways to measure HRV. I used to use a Garmin for many years. You can see it on your Apple Watch. You can see it on even Aura or Whoop or Fitbit. But all of those are tracking your HRV 24/7, and they give you like an average for the day, which is actually not very helpful because you're kind of comparing apples to oranges, and it doesn't take into account that your whole day is different. Like right now, we're having a conversation, so our minds are functioning a little higher than maybe when we first woke up. When we're at the gym, our bodies are at a very different stress level also. And so what you want to be looking at is the same exact time of day in the exact same condition every day to compare apples to apples to apples. So the way to do that, what it looks like is a chest strap. So there are a couple ones out there. Morpheus has a great one that came out recently. Polar H10 strap has been around for years. You put this on your chest, and it connects to an app on your phone, and you sit on your couch, 6 a.m. I wake up every morning, get my coffee. I'm sitting on the couch, and for 2.5 minutes, it'll do a scan looking at my heart rate variability, which is a direct surrogate measure of stress. Why do we care? What's the point of all this? Stress is not just psychological concern about finances and business and marital and kids and life. Stress is also stress from poor sleep, stress from alcohol, stress from eating the wrong foods, stress from overtraining is a very common problem. It can be a stressor. Stress from gut health problems, all kinds of toxins in our environment, all kinds of things cause stress, not just distress like psychological. And you can measure that and you can understand day to day how that's affecting you. For example, if you have a poor night's sleep or if you drink alcohol, you'll see your stress numbers will go through the roof the next day. You can see how your behaviors and lifestyles are affecting your stress. You can use that data. What you measure, you can manage. You can now start to make lifestyle daily tweaks and see how can I improve my heart rate variability on a daily basis. So important to track your stress. Finally, the third one I'll talk about, blood sugar regulation. So blood sugar monitors are not just for diabetics. Any guy can use it. You put it on your arm here, and for 2 weeks at a time, 24/7, it'll track your blood sugar. Why do you care? Why is this important? Well, we know, again, as we talked about earlier, blood sugar regulation is directly tied to not just energy and performance and your ability to burn fat and build muscle. It's tied to cardiovascular health and longevity as well. So critically important. Now, when you eat, of course, your blood sugar is going to go up a little bit. What's important is we want to avoid any major big spikes that last for long periods of time. So, for example, one of the clients, a great story I like to share is she could not lose weight. She, air quotes, tried everything to lose weight. We put a monitor on her in the first couple of days. She has this massive spike at dinner time. It went over 200 for over 3 hours.
Wow.
Now, it should never go above 140. If it does, it should be very brief. For her, that was sushi. She had sushi for dinner, and for her, it was kryptonite. And for her, it wasn't necessarily that white rice was bad for her, because in fact, we were able to switch the order of her intake and have her eat fiber first, vegetables, then the protein, and then white rice, and blood sugar didn't change much at all. So for her, it was the order of the food, and for her, sushi happened to be her kryptonite. And so that's why blood sugar tracking is so important. It'll help you understand how your nutrition, your stress, your sleep, your lifestyle is affecting blood sugar. And again, what you measure, you can manage, and you can use that to refine what you're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's so good. I love the aura too. I find I've done other ones, but the aura I'm just more consistent with because it's just so
Yeah.
easy. It fits on it fits on you. You know that ring finger is just so
Yeah.
easy to do. And then the blood sugar stuff's really interesting. And I've gotten a lot of data and things that awareness that things I wouldn't have even thought about. Things even just as simple as blue light at night, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd be
Yeah.
very surprised, you know. And the Aura Ring too. I was just thinking. I remember I had a glass of dry farm wine, so like a really clean wine, right? And I had like one glass for dinner. I didn't get drunk. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
And the next day, my sleep was a wreck. Prior to the day before, where I didn't have any alcohol, so it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see some of those, like you said, you can make these lifestyle changes and things that you might think big deal. It's just one glass of wine, but when you start tracking these things, you start to see
It's
the
huge.
impact that they're
It,
having
it's
overall. So
huge.
it's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah. And that's one of the most common things I see, Joel, is alcohol. And guys will minimize the effects of alcohol. Yeah, I just had one glass, I'm fine, not a big deal. But what happens is it causes inflammation. It raises your stress level ever so subtly, but nonetheless it does. It alters your sleep quality. It slowly, subtly affects your hormones, and it becomes this ugly negative cascade that you don't even realize is happening from just that one glass. But when you do the tracking, look at the data and see it, it helps you realize. I'm not here to tell you don't ever have a drink, but I'm here to tell you that when you see the data and how much it affects your body, it makes you think twice about, do I really need that? Does it align with my big why, my purpose, and my goals? And it helps you really make better decisions.
Yeah, yeah, so true. I wanted to ask you. I want to start. I know we were coming close to the hour. I want to wrap things up, but I wanted to ask you just any exciting projects or anything that you're working on currently with everything you got going on.
Yeah. So one of the great things we have that we've just launched recently at Gapin Institute in the last 6 months is something called Peak Launch Accelerator. So our program, our year-long optimization program, it's a very one-on-one concierge level intense program called Peak Launch. But we now have Peak Launch Accelerator. So 1 day event, and it's every quarter. So quarterly live event. Our next one's April 18th coming up. And all we do on that day is we dive deep into a lot of the science around what we talked about today. We have content, we have coaching, we have small workshops. We get shit done on that day. So we work on our 90-day quarterly goals. We work on gratitude, on working on what has worked, what hasn't worked, and we have everyone has a core three, which is what are the three things you need to focus on this quarter. And it brings people together where we do Q&A and content. We feed you, and we do stem cell therapy on site as well. I know one of your other podcasts dove deep into the amazing world of regenerative medicine, which is incredible. So we really, again, compress time for people who want to learn more about this stuff and how can I apply some of this stuff, but I don't have time. Come to just 1 day. Peak Launch Accelerator, amazing 1 day event. You can check it out, and it's a great way to kind of get started, dip your feet in the water and your toes in the water, and see if it's right for you. And so that's been a lot of fun for us to build that out, and we have amazing speakers each time, and the community we're building is just so fun.
It's so cool. It sounds like I got to be honest. It sounds like being part of like a mastermind down where you're at in
It really
Sarasota, right?
is. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a fun event! Like every 3 months. I mean, I would if I was down there, I would just show up every 3 months
Oh
and
yeah.
just be around like-minded people, set goals with each other, and like how can we all get better? I mean, what a fun event! I love that you're doing that. You know,
Yeah, and it's
that's
very
amazing.
interactive. Yeah, we do body comp scans. Anyone who wants to do a metabolic rate test, which is where you wear a mask for 8 minutes and it tells you your exact metabolism. It'll say exactly how many calories you're burning at rest and with exercise, and what your macro intake should be, your caloric intake should be. And then the other test is a VO2 max test, which is a measure of cardiopulmonary, your fitness level, which is a direct correlation with longevity. So we give you all those tests. We give you a body comp scan. We do blood draws if you're a client. We do stem cells. We give you food. We have all kinds of fun giveaways and peptide offers. And so it's a blast.
So cool. So cool. I love that you're doing that. I wanted to wrap things up, but just anything that I didn't ask you that I wish you that you wish I had. I mean, I know you and I could we'll have to have you
Yeah,
on for a round two. You and I could talk for hours on just different topics, but yeah, anything
sure.
specific that I missed.
One thing I'll emphasize here is a lot of guys get overwhelmed by all this. It's too much. All the wearables, all the testing, all the data. What do I do? Where do I start? It's confusing. And a lot of guys, when they're overwhelmed, they do nothing. And so how do I get started? What's the first thing I can do? And what has worked for me whenever things get tough is I go back to my why. What's it all about? What's my purpose in life? And for me, it is how can I be the best dad I can be? I have a beautiful, loving wife, but it's all about my kids. It's all about my 11-year-old son and my 9-year-old daughter. They are my everything, and everything I do is for them. And so all you got to do when you're lost, when you don't know where to start, is focus on your why and how can I be better? How can I really align with my why? And so for me, everything I do is focused on my why. And when you do that, the micro decisions become very easy. And so that helps drive me. How can I be the best dad, most present and engaged father I can be? And that's my North Star. And so for a lot of guys who are struggling with how do I get started? What do I do? You know, that simplifies it and gets you on the right track. And start with one thing at a time. It's you know, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. I love the book. For any of you who haven't read it, definitely check it out. One little tiny baby step a day makes all the difference in the world. So he talks about in that book, every time he pees, he does 2 push-ups, for example. 2 push-ups aren't going to move the needle. It's the habit. It's the consistency. It's the daily freaking accountability to yourself that every time I pee, I'm going to do 2 push-ups. He may do 20 or 50 or 100 push-ups, but he's always going to do 2. And that's really the whole concept of Tiny Habits to get started. And so that, to me, I think is a great way to maybe wrap this whole conversation up.
I love that you said that, man. It's so key because, you know, I had, you know, even at 42, I feel like I'm doing pretty well in my life. But my mom was recently diagnosed at 68, 69 years old with stage 4 cancer. And you know, when death is coming, you know, there's that memento mori everybody talks about. When you start to ask yourself about, oh my God, like life is finite. I started questioning my own life and started asking things that I'd been putting off for my own health and just like, I'm getting by. I'm getting by.
Yeah.
But I knew I could do better.
Mm-hmm.
And there were things that I were missing. Just for example, like my mercury fillings. I have 2 of them, and there was, you know, I've been wanting to get them out, and I just, yeah, I'll get to it. And moments like that capture me. I go, what are you waiting for, man? Like the perfect time, the perfect amount of money. There's never going to be, you're never going to have money. You're never going to have the time. Like, when are you going to do this? You know that every day, like that thing is a freaking neurotoxin sabotaging your health, and you're doing nothing. And it's moments, I love that you said that. And that was a big moment for me to reconnect with, what am I putting off? What is my why?
Mm-hmm.
And why do I want to be here longer? And it was for my kids, my wife. And I love that you said that, brother. That was so good.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Last but not least, Dr. Tracy Gapin, where can people connect with you, find you, learn more about all the cool stuff that you're up to?
Thanks so much. So our website is gapininstitute.com, GAPIN institute.com. And if the listener wants a bunch of gifts, I have a number of gifts for you guys. Go to gapininstitute.com/launch. That's LAUNCH. On that page, I have a copy of my best-selling book, Male 2.0. I have a copy of my Ultimate Peptide Guide, my High Performance Health Handbook, my TED Talk. I have a Peak Launch Masterclass, and a bunch of other freebies for the listeners on that page as well. So check it out. And if you want to talk with my team, there's a link on there as well to book some time with my team.
So good. Tracy Gapin, thanks for being on the show, brother. Appreciate you.
For sure.